Welcome back to Spellbound. It's me, BEEJ, and I have come alive once again just in time for autumn, spooky season, the most wonderful time of the year. I'll actually be going to Halloween Horror Nights later tonight and then all throughout the season with my besties, and it's just the happiest time. You know, I do wish that it got a little crispier outside and like cool and breezy. As it is, it does still feel like walking into a dishwasher when you open the door, but you can't have everything. Either way, you're here for books, and I have my autumnal spooky season TBR. Let's talk about it. Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This is about Jules, who befriends an apartment sitter who suddenly goes missing, only to discover that she is not the first apartment sitter to go missing. That's all I know about it. I'm sure there's actually more to this premise, but I'm pretty fuzzy on the details, and I actually like it that way, especially for thrillers. I want to know as very little about the premise as possible. The only thing really that I know about this book that made me want to pick it up is that it is by Riley Sager, and I'm still on the fence with Riley Sager. Riley Sager seems to be an auto buy for a lot of people. I'm always interested in people's auto buys, like your go-to author. No matter what they write, you will get it. An example of that for me would be Sarah Addison Allen, Sylvia Moreno Garcia, and a bunch more that I can't think of on the spot right now. But Riley Sager seems to be a lot of people's auto buy authors. I've only read one other book by Riley Sager. I read Home Before Dark, which is kind of a classic haunted house story, and I liked it. I really enjoyed reading it at the time. It didn't really keep a lasting impression on me. It had all of the cool spooky vibes of a haunted house story, but it didn't have any of the gothic atmosphere that I learned while reading it that I actually really enjoyed the most. It was middle of the road in that I really enjoyed reading it, don't really remember a lot about it. So I'm still kind of on the fence with Riley Sager. I hope that this one is a little bit more thrilling because I think it is, not really a haunted house story, but kind of like a thriller of someone going missing and a mystery and things like that. I hope that it's a little bit more exciting, but am I getting my hopes up? For those of you out there who like Riley Sager, or maybe for you is an auto buy author, what do you think? Do you think that I will like Riley Sager based on, maybe you know nothing about me, maybe this is your first video of mine. Hi, hello, thank you for being here, or thank you for coming back. Will I like Riley Sager? Jury's still out. I did learn in putting this list together that Riley Sager is a pen name, and the author's name is Scott something. No, Todd. The author's name is Todd something. Isn't that interesting? I love pen names. Lemony Snicket, like, this has gone on too far. Lock Every Door is the first book on this list. Have you read it? The Halloween Moon by Joseph Fink. So this one is a reread for me, and I don't even care. I can't wait to reread it. I remember loving this book 2 years ago when I first read it, and I have been kind of dying to come back to it ever since. From what I remember, it's about a girl who loves Halloween, really invests in her costume, and on the night of Halloween, her parents tell her that she's too old to go trick-or-treating. And so she, in my opinion, rightfully so, sneaks out of the house and goes anyway. But she discovers that her entire town has been cursed, like quite literally cursed. And so all sorts of different Halloween antics sort of befall the neighborhood and the town. Some things that I remember: goblins, cursed trick-or-treaters, poisoned candy, bad guy goons who travel via a haunted ice cream truck. Amazing. Exploding jack-o'-lanterns, and an actual Halloween witch. But the best part about this book is, at its core, this story is about the threshold between child and adult, and the threshold to grow up, and the awareness of being on that threshold. I love stories about that. That's why Peter Pan is my favorite story, and this book just had such a rich core of that transition and that liminal threshold that I'm thoroughly obsessed with, that I loved it. And it was wrapped in the most fun Halloween sort of dressing. Joseph Fink's writing was amazing. I know that this is said a lot, this character leaps off the page. Truly never more so than for this main character of this book. She is such a vivid character. I loved it. Loved her narration. So I'm revisiting it, and I hope that you will too, and then we can talk about it so that I'm not just talking at the void about this book because no one I know has read it, and I need you to. She is a Haunting by Trang Tan Tran. The Goodreads blurb is honestly all I need to know about this book. Are you ready? A house with a terrifying appetite haunts a broken family in this atmospheric horror, perfect for fans of Mexican Gothic. Say less. So I love haunted houses because I love ghosts, but Gothic haunted houses are uniquely scary because they're written in such a way that they usually are described as having some form of sentience. It's most often sentient in the way that it can devour. Anyway, I go on a small tangent about that in this video where I talk about enchanted settings or setting as character, and I use the example of Hill House from The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. But the opening paragraph of The Haunting of Hill House is it's next level literature. It's so good, and it perfectly sets the stage for knowing that you are about to enter a haunted house that is in some way acting as a character. So setting as character, hallmark of Gothic literature, a sentient haunted house, specifically as it relates to devouring, consuming, consumption, things like that. So I'm not saying that the house in this book is like actually alive. I haven't read this book yet, but I hope based on that Goodreads description that it is sort of, if not outright Gothic, very in line with sort of Gothic haunted houses, which I personally love. And I can't wait to dig into it. And speaking of haunted houses, Hell House by Richard Matheson. Honestly, this book sounds eerily similar to the premise of The Haunting of Hill House, but I don't think that the plot is going to be at all, and I don't think that the reading experience is going to be at all. But essentially in this book, this house is deemed evil because of the vile things that took place in there a long time ago, blah, blah, blah. So 4 strangers get together to sort of prove the existence of the supernatural, but while they're there, the house plagues each character sort of uniquely based on their own personal terrors. So similar premise to Hill House, but I'm sure that it will unfold way differently, and I can't wait. The Girl from the Well by Ren Chipeco. So first of all, Ren Chipeco. We love Ren Chipeco in this house. Shout out to the Bone Witch series, which is one of the best fantasy series I've ever read. And for fantasy, the Bone Witch series was really dark. And I don't mean dark like darkly violent. It had the same amount of violence as any other fantasy series should. But it was atmospherically dark, and dealt a lot with the dead and the undead and the recently dead, now no longer entirely dead. Meaning, I can't wait to see what she does with horror. And this, I believe, is a YA horror. And it follows Okiku, who is a restless spirit. And she's the restless spirit of a girl who was murdered. And so she spends her time sort of wandering the earth, finding and killing people who have killed children. So 2 of my favorite things, ghosts and revenge. Sign me up. Yes. But one day Okiku meets Tark, a teenage boy whose body is said to barely be able to contain the evil within, bound only by the tattoos covering his body. Yes, yes. Hide by Kirsten White. So I'm actually reading this one right now, and I'm loving it. Like, loving it. I already know that I love Kirsten White's writing style. This story is very poignant. It's very millennial minded, which is something I'm very passionate about, like that unique millennial angst and disillusionment and kind of like simmering rage. I like live in that space. So this book has a lot of that in its subtext, and it's not so subtle subtext, which I can appreciate. None of this is the point of the book. This is just why I'm enjoying it so far. Okay. Premise of the book. So this book is about a massive 2-week-long hide and seek competition that takes place in an abandoned theme park. And if that's not creepy enough, our main character is actually the sole survivor of what is known as the hide and seek massacre, in which her father killed her entire family in a deadly night-long game of hide and seek. Mac, short for Mackenzie, is our main character, and we do get lots of tiny flashbacks into her quite obvious PTSD, which builds her character really strongly and in a way that seems really authentic to her because she's obviously very, very guarded. She doesn't talk to people. She's extremely in her shell. And so we learn about her trauma and her past in ways that seem very authentic to her personality because she wouldn't share a lot of this. So it's third person limited in that way. But what I like about this book is that at key points in the game, we do get peeks into the other characters by having the POV switch to third omniscient. And so that just allows us to really peek into the thoughts and feelings of the different characters in the game and why they're there in the first place, what their angle is, what their motive is, their trauma, and if they have perhaps ulterior motives. It's done in small ways, first of all, and subtly, and in a way that you never feel like the perspective of the story has shifted away from Mac. This is definitely her story. She is the main character, and you're never unsure about that, but it does add a lot of really cool intrigue by allowing us to get into the heads of everyone, and it also adds to the reading experience, and it adds a cinematic feel without cheating the narrative. And so I like that. I also just recommended it to my boss, actually. Oh my God. I haven't even told you. I feel like we're friends. Who are you? You might have noticed that I have been away from the camera for a few months, and that's because over the summer I got another job. Started working again. To catch you up super fast, you know, I got really, really sick towards the tail end of 2022. All throughout 2023, I was just an unwell person. I was sick. I had an autoimmune disease that had an incredibly long and intense flare-up that targeted key parts of my body. They just started to quit and shut down and go offline. So I stopped working for most of last year. I kind of just took the year off, had to only focus on my health. So that was all I could do. I spent most of last year in bed anyway. This year, I am well, I am thriving, I am living my best life truly. Yeah, and I'm able to be creative again. So I started working again. I am show writing once again, and I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving my team. I'm loving the work that we do. I love the IP that we work with and the stories that I get to tell. And that's what I've been up to. So anyways, I was just talking to my boss yesterday and he was asking for like book recs, and I recommended The Shadow Glass by, hold please, Josh Winning. Yeah, I recommended The Shadow Glass by Josh Winning. It's like right there. If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. And then also I told him I was reading Hyde. I told him though that I hadn't finished it, so if it ends badly or if he doesn't like it or if he gets scared, he can't be mad at me for it. This has gone in too far. That's my update. It's so good to be here again. You might have noticed I'm pizzazzy, and that's because I'm feeling good, and that is a blessing truly. I will never again in my life take my health for granted. So next book, Bone Gap by Laura Ruby. So this one has been on my autumnal TBR for a long time now, and it's about a place called Bone Gap. It feels like a sort of transient kind of town where people sort of come and go into it in a very sort of liminal, literary, atmospheric kind of way. And it's about a girl who goes missing in this town, but because people seem to come and go so much in this town or leave or wander off, nobody really thinks anything of it except for our main character, who is a young boy, and he actually saw what happened, and his friend didn't wander off. She was kidnapped, and she was kidnapped by a man whose face he can't remember. This one is probably the most literary out of the group, but I've heard nothing but good things about it, and also it is on KU right now, so run, don't walk. Don't Go to Sleep by Bryce Moore. This is, I think, historical fiction meets true crime, I think. It takes place in New Orleans during World War I, and there's a serial killer on the loose who uses an axe as his weapon of choice. The main character, Gianna, starts investigating the murders, and as she does, she starts to discover that she may actually be connected to this serial killer, and in ways that truly terrify her. So I am not a true crime fan, like at all. But hear me out. I am an axe murder fan. Not in real life, okay? Not in real life, but like in stories, okay? Axe murders. They're just like cartoonishly brutal, you know? Like I love Lizzie Borden retellings. Okay, so like I loved Alfred Hitchcock Presents growing up, like just in general. My point was Alfred Hitchcock Presents did a Lizzie Borden episode in his first season, and I loved it. I also, I think, read a Lizzie Borden retelling last year. It was It Will End Like This by Kyra Lee. The storytelling of that one was really cool. So I like Lizzie Borden. I like An Axe Murder. I think I like An Axe Murderer, you know, we'll see. Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesare. So this YA horror is, I'm pretty sure, exactly what it sounds like. There's a small town, 4 friends, coming of age stuff, and a killer clown hunting down all the characters one by one. I don't really want to look up more than that because I don't really feel like I need to. The House on Needless Street by Katrina Ward. This one is about a serial killer, which again, I don't really like as much as I like Ghosts and Goblins and Revenge and Clowns in Cornfields. But I have heard amazing things about this book. Like, people who have read this book have called this book absolutely terrifying. One reviewer, it was either like Google or Goodreads or somebody, called it a nerve shredder, which, first of all, I just love that phrase. Yes, but also I want to be terrified like that. I want to be so scared, you know? And I love that it's getting all these descriptions and then also has just like the most unassuming cover. Like, yeah, it looks a little creepy, but there's like, the cat looks friendly, you know? So like, I don't know. Scare me, you know? Like, Masters of Death by Olive E. Blake. I'm quite sure that you've heard about this one before because Olive E. Blake wrote The Atlas Six, which is a quite popular BookTube and Book Talk favorite. I haven't read it, and I probably won't. Dark academia really isn't my thing, but it's wicked popular. So my point is, I'm sure that you've heard about this book. But what I'm looking forward to about it is that it sounds really lighthearted, which is nice, especially given the other books on this list. So it will be like a nice, refreshing sort of change of pace. I believe it's about a real estate agent who is also a vampire, and she's having trouble selling this house, which is very haunted, and specifically it's haunted by the ghost of someone who was murdered, and until she can solve that person's murder and lay their spirit to rest, she can't sell the house. I also think that it has an ensemble cast and has like a lot of other kind of plots going on in this sort of, I wouldn't go as far as to say like madcap, probably not, but it does seem definitely more jovial than the rest of these. I'm assuming it's lighthearted, could be wrong, hope I'm not. What do you think? Not Good for Maidens by Tony Bovalino. So I've been dying to read this book for like the longest time. And also this cover. This cover is like in the top 3 of my favorite covers of all of the books that I have on my shelf. Delightfully unsettling. And the green of this is, I just love this cover. So I am expecting high things from the book because I am absolutely judging this book by its cover. And in a good way, high expectation way. Anyway, it's about Lou. She never really believed in magic or superstitions until her aunt was kidnapped away to the goblin market. Now Lou has to learn how to navigate the supernatural, learning like tricks and spells in order to rescue her aunt. And she has to do all of this within 3 days or her aunt will be lost to the goblin market forever. So I am kind of obsessed with the fairy tale folklore vibe of this YA retelling of the goblin market, and I can't wait to read it. Ghostwritten by Ronald Malfi. So this is the year of the ghost stories for me, of the collections, the anthologies. I have several collections on this list, and I actually just finished one last week. It was Haunted Nights by Ellen Detlow, published by like Blumhouse Books. This collection, however, is only 4, and they're 4 standalones that all exist within a shared universe and tell one cohesive story. So not one narrative story, but one cohesive story. And this cover is like, If It Bleeds by Stephen King. You want to know something nuts? I've never read Stephen King before. I've never read a Stephen King novel before, fiction. I have read his nonfiction on writing, and I've read it twice. I actually liked it much more the second time. It's assigned a lot in college writing classes, believe it or not. Anyway, this book is a collection of previously unpublished horror short stories from Stephen King, all from Stephen King. So I'm really excited to get a taste for Stephen King and see how I feel about like his style and his writing. But what do you think? Do you think that I'll like Stephen King? Do you like Stephen King? I know that like at large, he is generally enjoyed, sort of the master of his craft kind of thing. But you specifically, how do you feel? I feel like it could be very 50-50. I feel like I could love Stephen King or hate him, and I'm just not sure. The Bone Key by Sarah Monette. This is also a collection all by the same author, and this one is actually all about the same character. So he is a sort of puzzle, let me say this right. He is a puzzle-solving archivist character named Kyle Murchison Booth. So I'm getting kind of Sherlock Holmes vibes from this, but leaning much more into the aesthetic of the Victorian Gothic aesthetic, which sounds really cool. I'm really curious about this book, and also that aesthetic is like the aesthetic of my entire home. The entire rest of the house is like if Indiana Jones and Sherlock Holmes had like a witchy love child. Our skull to room ratio is very high. Horseman by Christina Henry. So this is a Sleepy Hollow retelling from the absolutely ruthless Christina Henry. I've read three books by Christina Henry, and they're all so freaking intense. I love them. They are not horror in the way that you kind of expect them to be. They're just ruthless is the only way that I can describe it. They're just ruthless. And the way that I describe it, I'd say the same every time. I hope you're not tired of hearing it, but it's like she grabs you by the throat at the very beginning, the first chapter, and doesn't let go until the end of the book. I have never read a Christina Henry book in more than one sitting. They're just so intense, and so I can't wait to see what she does with Sleepy Hollow. Speaking of Sleepy Hollow, you want to know something crazy? I used to work for this woman who went by KVT. This story is about her last name, so I will protect her identity a little bit by not saying her first name. Anyway, her name was first name with a K, Van Tassel, and she is literally a direct descendant of the Van Tassels of Sleepy Hollow. Like her whole family is still in upstate New York where Sleepy Hollow took place. Isn't that cool? Yeah, like a lot of people think that the story of Sleepy Hollow is like all pure fiction, and like not based at all on like a real folklore story, but folklore comes from somewhere. The Spellbook of Katrina Van Tassel by Alyssa Palumbo. So this is another retelling of Sleepy Hollow, but it's giving historical fiction and potentially literary fiction vibes more than outright horror or thriller. And it's setting up more as a mystery of what happened to Ichabod Crane. And the links that Katrina will go to find what happened to Ichabod. So I'm interested to see that perspective. I'm really interested to see, I've not heard of this author before, but I'm interested to see what she does with it. Because I love the story of Sleepy Hollow, and it's such a Halloween type story. It's so autumnal, it's so spooky. The covered bridges of like the Northeast, super cool. So that is my entire autumnal spooky season TBR. Is there something that I definitely should have added but didn't? Because if you have a truly great horror or spooky or Halloween rec, please don't keep it to yourself. I want to know. I want to read all of those books over the next 2 months. I love this time of year, and I love it all. Okay, I can't say more about it because then I won't stop. So I would also love to know if you have read any of these, and if I should stay away from a couple, like how you felt about them, or if I should put a certain one, at the top of the list. What do you think I should read? Let me know. But most importantly, this autumn season, stay safe, stay spooky, and happy reading.